Greetings tubers, Mezcal here. Here we see LJ35. What's it doing? Loop-de-loops over Dubbo. What's going on over Dubbo right now? Here we see a developing cloud mass. Now, it's been suggested to me that I am perhaps delusional in making the connection between these Learjets and their operations and the rain that follows when they fly. Now, curiously, about 2 weeks ago, they weren't here. They were over in South America. There was LJ45, LJ60 and LJ35 operating in South America, and we had perfectly blue skies. Not a cloud to be seen. It was lovely. Then they came back, and then it starts again. Now, there's also a suggestion that cloud seeding is a fallacy. It is a complete and utter nonsense, and it doesn't work at all. And I would suggest that is absolute bullshit. We've got research from starting in research data from 1947 from CSIRO that showed that Australia was doing some rather interesting cloud seeding projects, flying underneath thunderheads, emitting silver iodide and enhancing the rain up to about 15%. And then we go forward a bit more to South Africa had a place where rain seemed to always be developing downwind of a paper mill, and they figured that what was in the smokestacks coming out of the paper mill was making it rain downwind. And this was in a warmer environment, warmer than what would normally work with cloud seeding using silver iodide. So what they found was that they could manufacture a flare, and that this flare had similar properties to what was coming out of the smokestack of the paper mill, and they were able to cloud seed in warm weather as opposed to using silver iodide in colder weather. So there's two different types of flares for rain enhancement that I'm currently aware of. We also have ones for suppressing hail. Let's go and have a look at what Dubai is up to. Images on a Google search, Dubai cloud seeding. We see a whole bunch of planes rigged up with flares, drones. Have a look at those flares there. Okay, red caps, blue things on them. Let me show you where they come from. This American company here, iceflares.com. Oh look, red caps, blue tape. There's the rain enhancement flares that are being used in Dubai. Got hail suppression and snow augmentation. Whole bunch of kit to fit out your planes. Now let's have a look at this Australian company, Australian Rain, which had money poured into it by the Turnbull government. Trials in Oman. Introduces ionised aerosols into clouds. So what they do is they use these antennas with a high voltage grid. There's no frequency upon it, it's just high voltage. And so here we see the equipment from these trials. These grids are basically just stainless steel wire with a high voltage grid across them. It's just high voltage. There's no frequency involved. It's just charging the particles of air dust that move through the grid. And they also found that if they biased the potential of how much energy went to one end of the array of these interesting looking things. Bundaberg, oh yeah, Bundaberg, Mount Lofty Ranges. Yeah. So Australia's also had these things set up and operating. Now, Yeah, steerability and increased rainfall. These guys are damn sure that it works, and this is what has led to the technology where they use charged wingtips on drones that's been developed in UK university and as well in Australia. Here's the flares, the ground-based burners for snowy hydro. 59 kilos of silver iodide plus a tracer, iridium tracer element was pumped into the air in the last season. You can find that information on the EPA website. The Chinese like to do things a little bit differently. Here we see the Chinese silver burners. They were talking about installing thousands of these things over in and around the Himalaya mountains. The Chinese also use rockets. It's also been said that there's artillery cannons that can be loaded with something that goes up into the sky and increases rainfall. Cloud seeding project announcement from 2008 in Queensland, and the results from those trials, they basically used a situation where they would cloud seed some clouds and not others, and they weren't cherry picking. They were basically looking for a situation where they had multiple clouds that looked the same, and they'd seed one and not the other, and then use radar to follow the cloud they seeded and see if it developed more rain. And they were quite confident that their statistical data showed that they had 15% or more rain from the clouds that were seeded as to the ones that weren't. The results from that can be found here. Here I'm using a web archive to go back and pull up some information that was that has been recently omitted from this website. This is another American company. So here you go. They helped out in the Queensland one there. Go back from there. I should be able to pull up yeah, so this list of clients is no longer showing, but if you use the Wayback Machine, you'll be able to find that all of these countries, it's been suggested that a fool and his money's easily parted, but all of these countries are, basically, if they can afford to do it, they're having a go. And water's going to be, one of the biggest commodities as we move into the future. And if you can make it fall from the sky, then you basically got money falling from the sky, haven't you? Now here's an interesting little bit of information about using jet fuel, commercial aviation, basically additives to the fuel. Now I caught some planes the other day. We had perfect blue skies and dissolving contrails, and then all of a sudden the very following day, not all but some planes were starting to leave a persistent trail. And I managed to catch in the same airspace, one after the other. I had Qantas and then a Virgin plane. Both of the Qantas emitted a persistent trail that spread out, and the Virgin plane didn't. And they were at the same altitude, essentially. There was perhaps 6,000 feet difference between them in the altitude, and that well above the normal altitude where you would expect a contrail. And the only inference that you can draw from that was that something had been added to the fuel. So it is my opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion, that Technologies to enhance rain are being experimented on by any country that has the money to waste on it in the name of sustainability and all of this, you know, World Economic Forum future talk about keeping the world from getting hotter. Like, they literally have used snow machines in in an experiment where they pumped salt water into the sky over the Great Barrier Reef in an attempt to see if they could mitigate the amount of radiation reaching the coral. In the whole premise was to reduce coral bleaching, but this experiment happened in winter, and there wasn't much coral bleaching going on in the middle of winter, so it sort of really is a bit strange. Bill Gates' money's been also connected to this cloud brightening using modified snow machines to pump essentially sea fog into the air. So it's going on. It's big business, and a lot of countries are denying that it's happening. Like, it's quite hard to find information on it if you don't use the right search terms. Anyway, that's my little rant for this morning. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already.